Hello. This is the Common Book Show. We haven't been together for a while. So today we have Richard and Tony, and we have Brian and a mystery guest. And then there's me, Paula Wachowiak, the host of the show. I can't say that I've been doing anything intellectual in the past couple weeks because I am on, I did manage to find a decent home for my mother-in-law's cats, and they are safely at a shelter in Blaisdell. So that was one big thing off my head, so I don't have to go feed cats every day.
That's big, yeah.
And I am in the process now of visiting other nursing homes. And you know what? You know what that means, Richard? It's not, no matter where my mother-in-law goes, she's not going to be happy. But I'm going to be happy because right now she's in a place that's pretty dismal. And so, and I know that it's hard on Greg when he visits her because it looks like one flew over the cuckoo's nest.
Oh, man.
So, you know, and not only that, though, I feel like I have to do the right thing. I have to do the right thing. And this is it. And when I do it, it's for me. It's not really for her because no matter where she goes, she has this expectation that her children should take her in and cater to her every need 24 hours a day. And I don't think that's a realistic outcome for any parent. I would never expect my daughter to give up her life to do that. You know, I feel like once my life, when I get to that point where I know things are going south, I'll figure out what to do. You know, but she has this expectation that her children should just be there and nurture her for the rest of her natural life, and it just can't happen. First of all, she wasn't that kind of a mom. They don't even really like her. You know, and so I am stuck with this because I at least feel that she's a human and deserves the best possible outcome. So that's where I am. So that's what I've been doing. I tried to write a little bit. I have been writing a little, but not much. So I am kind of out. Intellectual stuff is out there someplace, and I'm living in this weird little world of manipulating the system so I can get what I want out of it. But I did want to talk about the Russia thing, because you didn't hear about this. Mm-hmm. Vladimir Putin, I guess a lot of people are leaving Russia because of the war with Ukraine, and they're getting out of there, and people aren't having children. So Vladimir Putin came up with this brilliant idea, like all of his ideas, that he's going to reinstitute this, I think it's called Mother Russia or something, or Russia Mother or something like that. And he's telling women that if they have 10 children, that they will get the equivalent of 16,000, I think it's 16,000 American dollars in rubles, and they'll get the status. It's an award. They'll get this award with this cash prize. First of all, $16,000 doesn't keep a kid in shoes in a lifetime. One kid. You know.
And it's so easy for women to pop 10 babies out, you know.
And then, you know, yeah, it's very easy because, you know, gestation period's only 10 days, right? So, you know, in 90 days you can have 9 kids.
Quintuplets.
So yeah, he came up with this brilliant plan, and it's just remarkable that he, I mean, 10, you know what? Do you know how much havoc one baby wreaks on a woman's body? You know, your body, you're carrying another human being. You stretch out, and you've got to accommodate that human being, and then you have to push it out of one of the smallest orifices in your body.
Right.
And then you have to get right to work because that baby's hungry immediately.
Oh, yeah.
So
No, I totally get it, because I was standing there in the room the whole time my son was born, and to be honest, I walked out of the room and said, "Thank you, God, for making me a man." I can't believe women have to do this.
yeah, it's
Seriously.
Original sin.
and I was going to say
Oh,
I was just thinking that they had to come up with some kind of logical explanation why women have to. There's a lot more people getting cesareans now, which I don't think is better. I mean, you have to have a surgery to remove the child. But yeah, so 10 children. By that time, they just fall out.
Yeah, right.
You don't even have to push
You got to
anymore.
kind of work at holding them in there. Yeah.
You got to wear a special garment, like a catcher's mitt.
Do you think Putin is mentally stable?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think he's been out of it for a long time.
Yeah, he's.
I don't know. Do I look like I enjoy chewing on the end of a lit cigar?
Well, we have our resident punker here today. Tony's all decked out in leather.
Looking dangerous.
Looking dangerous. And then, of course, Brian had to button his top button. Otherwise, he would drive the chicks
My
wild.
5 chest hairs might stimulate someone's imagination.
So we're kind of, and Greg isn't here today, so he's home resting. Richard, I know you have a list. I have nothing except that Putin story.
Well, I want to bring something up from one of my conversations with Mr. James Walker.
Okay.
Tell me if this is true or false. Woman gets pregnant, woman has a baby. It alters her body chemistry in the pregnancy. The body chemistry stays altered, and the woman's body will never go back to the way she looked before she had the baby.
Not my experience, but go ahead first.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for deferring to the woman.
Yes, that's what yeah.
Okay. The woman, yes, your body changes, and there are some things that remain that way, but that's the price of motherhood. So if you have a child, your body, your chemistry does change briefly after you have the child, but it's more that the first baby stretches out the uterus. The uterus remains slightly stretched out, and when you have another pregnancy, it's easier for that baby to fill up that space. As far as the outside of your body goes, some women experience a lot of change depending on how much weight they gain during pregnancy, and other women can get back. I mean, it depends how much money and time you have too. If you have a trainer and you have the will to get back into shape, like the people who they trade their looks for money, movie stars, models, things like that. You can get back to a body that would be a pre-baby body.
That's all I was going to point out.
Yeah,
I've
you may
seen-
have stretch marks, and those you really can't get rid of. It depends on your skin. I never got stretch marks because my skin is malleable, but some women do, and then they have them like a road map on their stomach for the rest of their life.
But was he saying that women change mentally?
No,
after
he
having
was saying
babies?
that each time a woman has a baby, their base weight will increase by 30 pounds.
Oh, that's bullshit.
No,
that is
not every woman.
that
no.
is total.
After 10 babies, that's 300 pounds.
Yeah. Then she didn't even know
That's
she was
what-
pregnant. She didn't know about the 10th one.
That's
Then you
what
don't
happened to
even
have
know.
a population in Olean.
Yeah, you don't even know that you're pregnant because you're so big. No, that's not true. I gained a lot of weight with my child because I was compulsive eating because I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. I was 19 years old. So, but I lost the weight. You know, it came off. It does.
You lost the weight running around chasing the child.
Well,
Yeah.
no.
Just
you know,
kidding.
Actually, I'll tell you how I lost the weight. Some of it came off naturally, and then I went to a doctor. At the time, it was a long time ago. I went to a doctor, and the doctor gave me diet pills. And they worked so well that I went to another doctor.
Amphetamines.
and
Hello.
he gave me diet pills
You
too.
don't even want to eat. Yeah.
So I was cleaning my house at 3:00 in the morning. It was great.
What a euphemism, diet pills. I remember when they used to call them.
Yeah. Diet
Yeah.
pills.
So I took these, after I got to a certain point, I guess I was about 20 pounds heavier than when I started, and I was going for an interview. I had an interview with American Airlines. I was going to be a stewardess, and I thought, what a great job for me, because I would be able to travel. My mother will watch my daughter while I'm traveling, and I had to weigh a certain weight. At the time, they don't do that anymore, but I had to be a certain weight in order to be a stewardess. So that's what I told the doctor, and he gave me the pills, and then that's what I told the other doctor, and he gave me the pills too. And then by the time I finished losing the weight, I looked emaciated, and I ended up in the hospital because I stopped taking them because I had reached my goal weight, and I couldn't get out of bed.
So your energy level got affected?
It had drained me. Amphetamines are speed, you know.
You're. Not,
So I was in the hospital for 5 days, and nobody had ever figured out that I had abused amphetamines. You know?
although there were thousands of other women happening the same thing. To
Yeah,
them,
they just said that I was, I forgot, I think they said I was depressed or something, because that's what they tell women when they don't feel well, is that they're depressed.
Right.
And,
Yellow wallpaper.
yeah.
The old
So-
hysteria.
Yeah, I had the vapors, I guess.
But again, I mean, back in the 60s, half the women in this country, they had them on Valium. Mother's Little
Mother's
Helper and all
Little
that.
Helper.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, there was a lot more. They were easy. They were giving them out easily. My mother had Valium.
Did they affect her behavior?
They helped her put up with my terrible stepfather, you know, and they made her calmer, so she could put up with him because he was an asshole.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yes, no, he's wrong. But your body, you can lose that weight. The thing that I'm struggling with now with weight is that when we're adults, when we're in our working life, we are put on a routine of eating at certain times because that's the time you get your lunch break, and that's the time you get home from work. And I think that we screw up our ability to understand when we're hungry. And I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, and she said she read a book in the 60s about just this thing, that if you actually physically wait until you're hungry to eat, and then just eat enough to satisfy your hunger, you won't have a weight problem. And that's a pretty simple, and I'm looking around today as I'm driving to the nursing home to see Pat, and there's diet center after diet center after
yep.
diet center, and they all have a different way of looking at it and doing it, and it's all the same thing. Eat less and exercise more. You take in less calories than you expend, and you will lose weight.
I've actually been doing that a little more myself lately.
Uh-huh.
And granted, while the ovular shape of the tank belies that,
But that might be due to some other condition. You might be.
no, I'm just saying my tank is still round.
Yeah, the edema from the swelling if you've got pain in there.
But I like breakfast now. I'll eat some cereal. Typically, I'll maybe put some blueberries or raspberries on that. Do my orange juice. Maybe have a mandarin. I won't eat anything till dinner, and then I'll do just as you were saying. I'll eat enough to be okay.
Right.
But you know.
Eat when you're hungry. Right.
You know. But, you know, it's like I'm not piecemealing anymore. I'm not stuffing myself to the gills anymore. None of that.
Our society is screwed up the way we look, the availability of food and the quality of the food
Well, it's the
we eat.
modern Western diet, I mean,
Fast foods. And
yeah, a lot of it is just the processing of foods. And the FDA puts things in our food that are addictive, and they know that, and they also know that those things are going to make you sick. They know that when you're 60, 70 years old, you need to buy their drugs that are very expensive, and they're in bed together, the Food and Drug Administration.
That's
I think.
interesting. That is an interesting point.
They know what they're doing. They're out to make a lot of fucking money and fuck you over. That's what they want to do.
The whole thing is
Sadly.
Whole Foods. Well, Rich, I don't have to tell you this. That's what you do, right? Whole Foods, is less processing as possible, and eat when you're hungry. And and it's funny because when I was following Weight Watchers pretty carefully for months, and I did lose a little weight. Yeah, exactly. I did lose a little weight, but I was constantly thinking about food because they give you a certain number of points, and you feel you have, and they tell you have to eat all those points in order to have a nutritious diet, and they tell you so. And then they give you free foods, and so you're constantly eating those free foods like they don't have any calories, and so you're obsessing about food. You're obsessing about it instead of just going on with your business, and when you're hungry, stopping to eat. But if you've got this certain number of points or calories that you can eat, you end up overeating. I don't know. This is my new thing I'm working on now and I'm doing just as well with this as I was paying them every month to let me use their program.
Well, as our mystery guest pointed out a few minutes ago, how the FDA puts all these things in our food, consider this. Okay, when you asked just about any John, J, and Q citizen in this country what a cow should look like that is being bred for beef and stuff, they're going to say, oh, it's supposed to be, big, fat, rotund kind of thing. Yet, when you go to a place like, say, England, a cow over there raised for food, it actually has more in common with the build of a horse. Well, I mean, you look at the hormones and things that they feed
Antibiotics,
Yeah.
hormones.
and people have grown to expect that their food, their beef cows and stuff, are supposed to be like this.
Our food industry is broken here, but did you know that in Europe, when you go to a meat store, because they have different, it's not like, they have supermarkets now, but it's not like we have here. They have a cheese store. They have a meat store, a butcher.
produce.
They have fruit and vegetable markets. So when you go and buy meat, in Paris at least, because that's what I saw, it tells you the name and location of the farm that the meat came from. It tells you where it is, who owns it, where it's located, and you can go and talk to that farmer if you want to and see how their meat is raised. It's clean. There's no antibiotics. Of course, they did have that mad cow disease in England, but that was an anomaly. So they have a connection to their food. And same thing with their produce. This comes from this farm.
You can do that here.
Yeah.
I'm not a vegetarian, but I belong to a subscription service, and all the meat
Yeah.
and fish is delivered to my house once a month, and they tell you the name of the farm.
Tell you the
Everything is
source.
humanely raised.
Yeah.
And it's not only, when it says grass-fed, that means they fed it grass, but they also fed it other stuff. This is grass-fed and grass-finished from the cradle to the grave.
Yeah.
And the fish is all wild caught, so it's about as healthy as it's like that.
Right. You can also go to local farms
and local farms.
And there's a Bidwell market in the nice weather where you can go, and they've got people there that have raised the meat and are selling it.
Yeah, I feel better about that.
Yeah.
I'm still eating meat, but
Yeah.
I still feel better that the animals were not mistreated. They're killed, of course. But,
Yeah. No, yeah.
you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. I've never been a big meat eater, so it's
Yeah.
not. It wasn't a huge change for me not to eat. I mean, I'm not saying we don't eat it at all, but we hardly ever do.
Right.
But
Well, the big downfall was the advent of factory farming in the U.S.
and do you know when
Tens of thousands of pigs in one place, hundreds of thousands of chickens all
and that was done. That
little
was
cages in one
that was
place.
done
And it's hard
with
to consult with someone from Iowa Beef Packers or JBS or Smithfield or XL because you're just going to get some head that's going to feed you what you think you want to hear.
Yeah, the small farmer was well, they're not completely gone, and there's kind of a trend coming back to small farms. But the meat business, they did it on purpose. There were places that were processing meat that wouldn't process for small farmers. They would only process for these big corporations, and because they had a monopoly on it. And so these small farmers would go out of business, and they'd sell their farms to, guess who? The big corporations. And these corporations don't give a shit about anything except making money. And they don't care if they're poisoning us. They don't care if they are mistreating these animals that, they're the Native Americans. They used to hunt, and then they'd thank that animal that they hunted. They'd say, "Thank you so much for all the gifts that you're giving us."
Well, they had a closer connection to those
Right,
creatures.
and they would be very grateful, and they would use everything off of that animal. Now we have, I don't even want to think about it because it makes me sick. The way meat is grown and processed, it would make anybody not want to eat meat.
Have you ever read any books by Eric Schlosser?
Is that the one that wrote
Fast Food Nation.
Fast Food Nation? I haven't read that book, but I think, did you mention that book to me? Somebody mentioned it to me.
What was going on with the workers in the slaughterhouses back during Sinclair's Riding of the Jungle? Mm-hmm. It ain't much different now, except that
Right.
these places are now in just anti-union states, and what they do, they'll move into a place like Lexington, Nebraska, and they'll suddenly become the lifeblood, or they want you to believe, and they will deliberately aim for a population to work in those plants that knows little to nothing of any kind of law. Many can barely read or write
Right,
English.
and they're keeping us stupid through our educational system.
And what they put those folks through in just a day's work there, it's like something out of Dante's Inferno.
Well, when Teddy Roosevelt, did we talk about this Teddy Roosevelt thing at all?
Yep.
Well, when Teddy Roosevelt sent some spies in after he read the Jungle. Yeah, he sent spies in, and they did an investigation, and that's when they got the law passed for meat inspection. For I don't know exactly what it was, but they passed a law that helped a little bit, I guess.
For a while.
I aimed at the public's heart and by accident hit it in the stomach. That was Sinclair's words. Because he was aiming to try and open people's eyes about how the workers were being treated. Mm-hmm. They were more concerned about their food.
Right. Yeah.
And the people who had to work in Packingtown were like an afterthought.
Yeah, I don't know why we haven't had a revolution. I really don't. I don't know why. I think there's complacency, but I think it's more than that. I think
it's coming time.
I think that we are dumbed down. It's all in the plan too, like and entertainment, alcohol, drugs. It's not. I think that the idea that marijuana. I mean, I'm not against marijuana. Don't get me wrong, because I do think it's useful, but people who abuse it, they don't have the impetus. They don't care what else happens around them, So I don't think it's as. It doesn't surprise me that it's becoming legal for all uses, because it's another thing like alcohol that will keep people in complacent and in their spot.
This is how life must be to keep the sheep asleep.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself, but that's perfect. Yes. So anyway, so now that we're off on this tangent, how did this start, Richard? What was your comment that brought us to this whole?
Well, we addressed the gaining 30 pounds.
Oh yeah. And so we started talking about the.
So the second thing that James and I discussed had to do with a cartoon by Lainey Molnar. Have you ever heard of Lainey?
Is that the one that you sent me?
I sent you Lainey Molnar's
Yeah.
cartoons. She
Yeah.
writes about women issues. All right. I believe I sent you.
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, here's what James and I were discussing. This person says, she's not single because she can't get a partner. She's single because so far everyone she has only shown her why she's better off alone. Now, since James is very, very much into the dating scene,
Right.
Yeah.
this is anathema to his worldview.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So I asked him, what are your thoughts on this? And I thought it was very revealing what he said. He said, my problem with stuff like this is that it puts forward a propaganda that women are strong and independent and don't need no man. The problem is women who follow this line of thinking end up joining the statistic of most unhappy people in the country, being single, childless, professional women over 40.
James, with all the love in my heart, fuck you.
Hey, Jimmy, let me ask you something. I mean, seriously. Okay, I'm 49. I battled for way too freaking long to try and find a mate, and finally I just gave up because I realized maybe I don't exactly need to have someone locked ring in ring, hand in hand, tongue in tongue, to live life, I mean, it's, okay, I don't get this. What, who, where, and why were we programmed to believe that we actually need to have a mate? It's if you don't have a date, if you don't have a partner in that, you're weird. You're strange.
To make more human beings.
Okay, well,
Right.
here's one thing. I don't particularly like people as a whole. I mean, once I get to know them, like here and everything, that's cool. But the general anonymous society is intimidating and threatening to me. And the way this world's going, no kidding, the way this world's going now, I almost feel that I would be committing a crime to bring a child into this world. I'll be the first to admit, I'm no parent. I'm good at spoiling other people's kids, yeah, but I'm no dad. And I couldn't bring a kid into this world and say, well, bud, now this is yours to try and
See, I give you major props for that because I think there are a lot of people that have children because of the societal pressure.
Right.
They think they're
I
supposed
think
to have
you're right.
children, and maybe they didn't really want children, or it doesn't fit their.
And by the time they
persona.
figure that out, they've got kids.
And they mess up their kids, and they mess up their
so-
own life, and I
Yeah.
give you major ups for that, dude.
So
And then you got look at some. This is the worst scenario. Look at some. Now you get someone like Casey Anthony. She brings a kid in the world,
Probably didn't want it.
and the kid lives to what, 3 years old, living to die because her fucking piece of shit so-called excuse of a mother couldn't be a mother and freaking kills her. Okay? And what happens? Some goddamn jury acquits her. And whoever you 12 motherfuckers are, I hope you're in pain. That kid died. What did she do? She didn't do nothing. Yeah, I'm
I
sorry.
know. That is one of your pet. And I won't say peeve. That's too light of a word, but I
Yeah.
know that
Yes. Yes.
that gets you emotionally. But the
Yes.
thing is that the thing that James brings up is this about independent women since women's lib, I guess, maybe the 70s, women are able to go out. I mean, before that, centuries ago, women had very few options. You know, you either got married and had your husband support you, or you could be a teacher, a nurse, a nanny taking care of somebody else's kids. There were very few options for women, so marriage didn't seem like such a bad thing, even if you didn't really want to get married. I mean, you may have think, okay, this guy wants to marry me, I'm going to get married, and I'm going to do all the things for him that I would have to do for somebody else that I wasn't even attached to. I have to clean their house or watch their kids or whatever. But women have options. You know, women can do anything now, and so
Right.
we don't need to sell ourselves short to be in a relationship that's not going to work for us. You know, and I think eventually maybe, and this comes right back to what we said earlier about treating women differently than men. He would never have said that about a man. Like, the thing is, yes, it is nice when you find an appropriate partner. I'm not saying anything against that. But to partner just because it's what's expected of you,
Yeah.
and just because you feel inferior because you don't have a partner, that's suicide. That's emotional suicide.
But that pressure is on men and women.
It's on both, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we
That's
don't-
the first thing I thought of when I saw that
Yeah.
cartoon and his comment.
Right, but we don't have to do that. And the thing is, I think that people who remain single, I mean, yes, it's a choice, but it's just not a. I mean, desperate people are difficult to. It's difficult. Desperate people are difficult to get pair mated because they scare people. They scare the opposite sex, either men or women. Women who are like so anxious to get married that's all they, you know, they're going on dates just to get married. That's scary. And a man who is just desperate for a relationship is
people smell
scary too.
desperation, yeah, for sure.
And so, I mean, to be,
Yeah.
and people like Richard, and I know you have female friends too, and I know you have some female friends. If you have female friends and you understand that they're just human beings with different genitalia, you will be a better partner because you won't expect when you get into a relationship, well, cooking, cleaning, that's your job. You know, I know you work, but isn't it the woman's job to do that? That's not attractive to most women who have to work full time.
Just like having to, you know, say, oh, well, the guy's supposed to be the He-Man. He's supposed to, you know, lift the world up on his shoulders and carry it. He's supposed to carry the burden. He's supposed to be the rock.
No.
Why can't a man and woman just be people?
Oh, there's this
person.
beautiful short story, and I mean it's weird in a way. It's old. I think it's from either from the beginning of the 1900s or maybe it's the end of the 1800s, where this guy and this woman are engaged, and this guy ends up sleeping with this vendor that sells newspapers, and it's a one-time thing, and then he gets a letter from the woman that he's supposed to marry, and of course he never tells her in this scenario. But she writes to him and she says, "Let's not be husband and wife. Let's just be two people who care about each other and who want to help each other and be partners. Let's be that." And you know, he feels guilty about sleeping with the woman at the newspaper stand, but he realizes the difference between lust and love in that moment.
That's cool.
So it's really it's called "I Love My Wife." So it's a cool story. I really liked it, but that's what she writes to him, and I mean that was a lot. Maybe it's not that old. It just seemed like a really old-fashioned kind of scenario. You know, the engagement and the language that he uses and stuff. But I loved that. Let's just be two people who are partners and who help each other, you know. And I thought, yeah, that's what a real marriage is. That's what a real relationship is. It's not.
Well, that's what I always looked for, but I never found it. I always wanted to be with a woman where it would literally be 50-50. She and I shared all the responsibilities, everything. But the stereotypes always seem to come into play somehow, that as the man I should be this, and as the woman she should be that.
And that's the thing, and I think it's our age, basically. I think
Sure.
that we grew up during a time when those mores were still really.
Yeah.
I don't think the millennials have that same thing going
No.
on. I think they're going to be in a better place relationship wise, but
Oh yeah, growing up in the 60s, 70s too, I was always taught, be a man, you should never cry, you should never show weakness.
who told you this stuff? Your father?
Oh, like all the men around me that
It was
you
just
know
the
are a little
norms and
bit older than
mores.
me. That my uncles, you know,
Yeah,
you don't cry. If you're hurt, you do not cry. You do not complain. You do not show any weakness because you're a man. Damn it!
Did you
And
hear
men
that?
don't show pain.
I did. I was in a
That's what I grew up
situation, if
with.
you showed weakness, you got beat. You got
Yeah.
beat. You got,
Yeah.
physically, yeah.
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 Even in high school.
What are you, a candy ass?
Yeah.
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 What
Yeah.
are you, a queer? You know, all that
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to work construction crews a lot, and you couldn't show weakness to those guys because they'd eat you alive.
Right.
They really would, and I
Right.
wasn't a regular construction worker, and I learned to toughen up in those
Yeah,
situations.
well, they are, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. They define themselves in that way. And so if you are able to live among them and you are different, it's the Jerzy Kosinski
The
painted bird.
Right, right.
You know, you paint a bird in the German forests, in
kill
the
'em.
Black Forest.
They get 'em.
The kids take a bird and they paint it a different color, and they watch the other birds of its own kind peck it to death.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Did you see that movie, by the way, version of The Painted Bird?
I think
I
so,
don't
yeah.
think I did. Is it good?
It's really
Long time
beautifully
ago.
photographed, but it's extremely disturbing because I
Oh,
don't know if you know the
Kosinski-
story.
Ko-
It's child abuse
Yeah.
from the beginning
Yeah,
to the end. It's really horrific.
Kosinski
Yeah.
was a. I mean, he wrote the same book over and over in
Yeah.
some ways, but
Yeah.
I really liked him
Yeah.
because he's totally disturbing.
I didn't read the novel, so I can't comment on
Yeah.
how closely the movie followed the book.
Well,
but
that
the
image-
film was worth seeing.
That image stuck with me my whole. In fact, I've written poems about that. And I found that I feel like that painted bird. I'm part of the human race, but I'm different.
Yeah.
So that's why
feel
at some
that way, too.
point, you just try to hide. You try to repress that, at least around people who could do you harm.
I
So
wonder how
that's-
many of us are painted birds, though. I feel like that painted bird too, so it's reassuring to hear you
Same
say that.
here.
It's nice to know you're not alone.
Yeah. Oh
See.
no. There's
Sure.
there are others.
There are other painted birds out
You're
there.
not alone.
Speaking of literature, I read a masterpiece today that I want to share with you.
Yeah?
Because, Paula,
Oh,
you
good.
said that you haven't really been doing
I
this
haven't
enough
been.
intellectual stuff.
No.
Well, a few years ago, a coworker of mine who is a writer, a novelist, and he's done pretty well, he said, "Have you heard of Balzac, the French
Yeah.
author?" And I said, "Yeah, but I'd never read any of his stuff." And he said, "I read all of him."
Wow.
The Human Comedy, which is like 100 novels and novelettes and short stories. It's this massive thing.
He's
And
got
he
a
said-
lot of-
And he said, here you go. He gave me 2 boxes
Wow.
full of all the books.
Boxes of
So
Balzac.
Richard has been following my progress. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, I started to read it. And I thought, how do you start with this?
Yeah.
So there's a reading order online, right? And I've read so far, out of 100 titles approximately, I've read about 6 of them.
Yeah.
And the one I read this morning was amazing.
Was it a short? Is it short?
It's a shorter
Yeah.
one. It's called Passion in the Desert, okay? And I thought to myself before reading it, what could this be about? Because Balzac's attempt was to create a complete sociological portrait of early 19th century France from like 1799 to about 1830.
Right.
For 30 years.
Right.
In every class of society, every aspect of culture, war, peace, everything. And I thought, desert, there's no desert in France. And I thought,
Yeah.
Napoleon was in Egypt. I'll bet you it has something to do with that. Sure enough, it does. And I'll make it real short, but this is
Yeah,
such
no,
a
no,
beautiful,
you
it's
don't
so
have to.
beautiful. I was so
Yeah.
taken by this. I felt like an eagle swept down from the sky and picked up my heart and took it up to heaven when I read this short
Holy
story.
shit.
It was it's so beautiful. Hi, Tom. And anyway, it starts out where this man is on a date, and they're at this circus-like menagerie where there's, you know, like lion tamers, but
Yeah.
he's with hyenas in a cage. And the girl says, how could anybody do that? Like, I would never, there's things will kill you. And the guy says, well, there must be a secret to it. I don't know. I wouldn't do it either. And he tells his girlfriend or the date, he said, I could tell you something about that actually, though, because I met this guy one other time that I was here.
Uh-huh.
And he starts to tell the story, and he's sitting and watching this tamer of the hyenas, and there's an old soldier who's been in the Napoleonic Wars, and he lost his right leg, and he's scarred up, and he's real tough, real macho, like we were talking
Yeah.
about. And the guy says, God, I couldn't do that. And he goes, it's old game, no big deal. He goes, he's really curious by what this guy says, and he says, what do you mean, no big deal? If you could tell me that guy's secret, I'd be fascinated. So he says, okay, I'll tell you. He said, I fought for Napoleon in Egypt. And when Napoleon was there, he was fighting the British and the Arabs.
Uh-huh.
And he said, I got captured by the Arabs. And they were beating me and whipping me, and they had me tied up. But the desert is so big, all they did was tie my hands because they realized I wasn't going to run away. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So in the middle of the night, he decides he's going to get away. And he takes his teeth into and bites a scimitar, like one of their swords, pulls it out, and he cuts the rope, and he gets on one of their horses, and he rides the horse until the horse drops dead. And he stole a gun, too. So now he's got a gun, a big knife, nothing. No food, no water. And he just starts to look around in the desert, and he's surrounded by
Oh,
an
it's
ocean
so
of
crazy,
sand, and
yeah.
he's going to die, right?
Yeah.
So you eat the horse.
So finally, he gets to this place. Yeah, great idea. The horse comes into it, gets to a place, and he finds a cave surrounded by these palm trees, date trees, and
Oh,
he
yeah,
starts
so
to eat the
yeah.
dates. And he goes into the cave, and he falls asleep. And he hears something when he wakes up, and a panther comes into the cave.
Oh,
And
okay, I've heard the story.
He's
You're-
terrified.
yeah.
He's just terrified. What am I going to do? I'm not going to. I could kill him, but if I miss, he's going to kill me. So he's so scared. The thing goes to sleep. He tries to get up. It moves. He's afraid, so he stays. And he says, I'm going to wait till dawn to see if I can see what to do. The sun comes up, and the panther wakes up, and it just starts to look at him. And he's terrified. And he notices there's blood all over the muzzle of the panther. Spoiler, he got the horse that he dropped, right? He goes, well, he's not going to eat me. It's a she.
Yeah.
Not going to eat me because she's full.
Okay.
And a mysterious thing happens. It starts to purr and come up to him. And he pets the panther. And they develop this relationship. And he said it was like a love affair. And he said he fell in love with this panther. And the panther acted like it was the first connection she'd ever had with anybody. And he develops this real bond, and he starts to trust her. When he tries to go, she follows him, and she starts, I want to be with you. And, of course, panthers, and he puts a flag up, hoping the French army is going to come by and save him, right? And as their relationship progresses, the story ends. And the girl, the guy tells the story, he goes, well, what happened to the panther? What happened? How did it end? And he goes, well, like all relationships, they had a difference of opinion. Panther got hungry, and he stabs the panther in the throat with the scimitar. And he said there was no anger on the part of the panther. We both understood that that's the way nature is, right? Mm-hmm. That the big fish eat the little fish, and she accepted the death. But when the French soldiers found him, they found this man weeping in the desert, and they couldn't understand why he was crying next to this panther.
Yeah.
And the last line of the thing is something about, he tries to compare it to society, and he says, the thing about the desert is men are not there. I don't know why this line moved me so deeply. I'm paraphrasing it badly. Men are not there, but God is. And there was something about reading that just made me, it was so sublime.
it
There
was
was no
just-
cliche about it.
Right.
It was beautiful.
It was just nature at the purest. But okay, so what about the leg?
The man's leg, how he
Yeah.
lost his leg.
Yeah.
It says the panther went to bite him,
Yeah.
but it doesn't say where. It never tells you in
So
the
it's-
story.
so
and he
the-
stabbed him, but he could have got hit by a cannon. I mean, he's been fighting in the Napoleonic
Yeah,
Wars
but he
for
didn't.
years, right?
Right. He didn't lose his leg. He didn't lose his leg to the panther.
That's not indicated.
It's not
no,
indicated.
No,
Okay.
that's not. That doesn't seem to
Yeah.
have been
Well.
the case.
Well, the thing it just reminded me of the story about you knew the snake that the
Right,
person brought into.
That the Republicans like to use now.
Yeah, well, they bring the snake into the house and they nurse it back to health because it's dying, and then the snake bites them.
You knew I was a snake.
Right, and the snake says, "You knew I was the snake when you took me in."
That's right.
It's
What do
the
you
nature. It's the nature of the animal, and that the same thing with the panther. It's going
Yeah.
to get hungry, and it's
That's
the
right.
nature of the panther.
That's right.
That he was doing, or she was doing, what she does,
Yeah.
and that's
And are we any different? Like kind
Well,
of what we
that's-
were talking about before.
accor-
Are we superior?
according to the
we are
Stoics,
animals,
no, we're supposed to be just like animals, do what is our nature. Act according to our nature, and so
Which is we're really advanced chimps.
I don't know
Yeah.
about superior. Our nature just seems to afford us the ability to scheme and to. I don't know of any other species that does things out of pure greed, out of malignancy, out of spite.
there's a right.
And my dick's better than yours, or
Yeah.
all that shit.
I think that's how the concept of evil and the devil arose. Is like, what is this in man that makes us? Of course, no, but of course they're doing it for if a gorilla comes in and there's a female gorilla with babies, and the gorilla wants to mate with her, it will kill those babies because it wants its offspring to live and not those offspring that are there. I mean, it will do that. That's why the females tend to stay away from the men when they're not ready to have intercourse, to have children. They tend to keep away. But so there are animals, and there's some kind of an ant that does weird shit too, like that. Like, it's very vengeful or something. I don't remember what they are. I just remember seeing something about it on a.
Then there's the black widow spider.
Vengeful in our terms.
Well,
But-
right. We when
yeah.
we personify them, it seems like vengeful behavior is
Right.
what it seems like. So yeah, I bet that was cool. I haven't read any Balzac. I don't know.
It-
Have
I haven't read them either. I've
It's
only heard
amazing.
of them.
And what Tony just said about how people are scheming and deceitful and all that, when he goes into Parisian culture, it's so ruthless and it's so true. And you read it and you think, I thought our society was vicious and ruthless. And it
You know-
gives me, in a way, hope, because
Oh,
what
but-
he describes, it's pretty bad, man. It's
So,
a dark
there's
picture.
there's a movie that's called Dangerous Liaisons.
Okay,
I
I know.
don't-
I'm familiar. I know of it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't think I've
You-
seen it.
If you're interested in seeing how, it was French. I think it was during the 1700s. The movie was
Right,
set.
18th century thing, yeah.
Yeah, and it's quite brutal.
Yeah.
It's
Cynical
really
and
very
yeah,
brutal.
Yeah,
He destroys this girl just for fun.
yeah,
For fun.
yeah.
And he,
Just the cruelty of the society and
oh,
the
it
culture.
was
And
just awful. I mean,
Yeah.
it was interesting. I liked it, but it was diabolical,
yeah,
you know. But okay, so I don't know how we got to where we were, but I know it was something that we talked about the cartoon. Is that did we get there from the cartoon?
Yeah.
That's pretty
I
interesting.
followed a thread.
I think it was a really tangled thread. It's like, so
I sent this to the mystery guests
Yes.
and to some other people I know.
Uh-huh.
And I asked them, can I ask you what you conclude from the following historical examples?
Okay.
Okay? Hegel claimed that there was an upcoming golden age, which he deemed the end of history. Okay?
Okay.
Right.
Einstein had a theory of relativity, and that was followed by his search for a unified field theory that would embrace all knowledge in a single formula.
The theory of everything.
Yeah.
Optimistic, okay? Wittgenstein claimed, I have now solved all the problems of philosophy.
The painter? Lichtenstein?
No, the
Lichtenstein?
philosopher.
Wittgenstein was a philosopher.
Oh, because there's a painter, Lichtenstein, too. Okay.
Okay, this is with a W.
Oh, okay.
Like Wittgenstein.
Vic,
Yes.
okay.
Freud claimed that he found the source of all mental illness.
Well,
Sex.
Can you
Yeah.
see all this optimistic
Cigars.
exuberance?
yeah, there's
Yes.
Marx came up with a utopian economic system.
yeah. Well,
More
the-
optimism, right?
yeah.
What happened to all the optimism?
Well,
People
because
got their hands on it.
we as human beings want to we want to classify everything, and we want it to make sense, and it doesn't. It's chaos. So we can't just let it be chaotic. We try to make it
Good answer.
Yeah, it is a good answer.
chaos is all around us. I mean, there's some things that make sense. I mean, you can, like, for instance, if you plant a seed of an oak tree, it won't grow into a tulip. It'll grow into an oak tree. We can't really explain the process very well because we don't understand it yet. But there are certain things that make total sense. But then, then there's that woman in Washington who got struck by lightning. Like, she was under a tree. It hit near her 6 times or something crazy like that. She's alive to tell about it. I mean, that's
But 2 other people died that were near her. I think.
really? I didn't know
Or at
about the
least
2
one.
other people.
Yeah.
But anyway,
And she has survivor guilt, I saw yesterday.
yeah, I didn't see the whole news
Yeah.
thing, but
Yeah.
but we live in a world that makes sense sometimes, and so I think smart people try to have it make that's what happens with mathematicians who go crazy trying to figure out the math behind the existence. They go crazy because it can't be done. I mean, maybe eventually our minds will evolve enough that we can figure out that there is something that can unify everything. But we're not ready. We're not there yet. Do you think that there's an explanation? Do you think that there's one explanation for everything?
I think the desire to find it shows a lot of optimism.
It does.
Yes.
I mean, couldn't we all agree that
And
all
there's-
those
Yeah.
examples show people that were very optimistic?
And there's a lot of serious thinkers that question, like I question, whether we overestimate our intelligence and our mental abilities, and I don't know if we actually have the capabilities of finding that.
Well, I don't think
That's where your
yeah.
optimism comment comes
So-
in. We like to think that we can, but
I think if you reanimated a caveman and they didn't know anything about philosophy or religion or anything like that, they wouldn't have the same capacity for knowledge that we do now. Because I think I used to get into arguments with my professors about this in my archaeology classes. I think our brains are evolving. I think that the more information that we get and the more, I think, because we're building on top of old information. So even if we're not born with that, when we're discovering it, we're building upon it. And I think that the brain of I think it just makes our brains bigger or more efficient or something. All this information that's out there.
What about hunter-gatherer tribes? There aren't many of them left, but there's a few.
Yeah, there's a few.
Who don't. I wonder if you could take one of their children and put them in our schools if there would be a difference. You see what
No,
I mean?
there
Because you're saying the brain's developed.
Yeah,
wouldn't,
I don't,
Maybe I'm
I
barking up
don't
the wrong
know.
tree.
I mean, if you took them from birth, I don't
think so.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know, because there's got to be something, because we weren't we weren't ready. I mean, 500 years ago, I know I always use this example, when people thought that bees popped off the carcasses of dead animals. That's where they thought they came from. You know, they weren't capable of doing the science to figure out where bees actually came from. They just made these assumptions. You know, so haven't we gotten, I mean, not everybody, obviously, but haven't we gotten more capacity for knowledge? Doesn't
There's a few different points I can make on that. For one, they do know in the last couple 100,000 years that the human brain has increased in size and gotten more complex, but also there's the anthropological angle of we're the only species that we know of, except maybe like dolphins, maybe a couple of species that build knowledge and pass it down to our children.
yeah, whales do.
And our knowledge is ever increasing because of that, because with books and media, we pass down all that knowledge is inherited, so the knowledge is ever exponentially increasing, but there are a lot of scientists that have found that, for instance, like Cro-Magnon men and Neanderthals are actually more intelligent than they thought.
Neanderthals had bigger brains than
Right.
we do. They had bigger, heavier
But I mean,
brains.
it's been assumed till recently that they were
yeah.
dumb compared to
oh,
us.
right, because
but they weren't.
we're species centric.
Yeah.
You know, we think
Yeah.
we're bigger, better. You know, but
Yeah.
Put it
But
country simple, don't throw the trash away until you're sure that you have or have not found the treasure.
and that is referring to.
In other words, you know, a lot of people are willing to just throw away the history of the Cro-Magnon, saying, oh, he was dumb, he was more.
Oh,
whatever.
right.
But there might have been something back there that we didn't even know.
Yeah.
Consider
right.
Da Vinci, okay? If we had gotten on the bandwagon with him, you know, who knows where we'd be now. He had designs for the escalator, the plane, the tank, the submarine, the elevator.
Painted bird.
Yeah.
painted
Yeah,
bird.
there you go. There's a painted
yeah.
bird for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So, you know, and so, yeah, I know, but I don't think anybody else was ready. I think maybe
Right.
he was at a point where he had evolved differently somehow. I don't know. I want
Unbelievable genius.
I
Well,
want
here's
to
a really-
believe. I want to believe that eventually we're going to evolve to
Right.
a place where we're going to be smarter than the fossil fuel burning
Well, eventually I
creatures
think
we
we
are.
will, but I don't know
think
how
we
long
already
it's going to take,
are.
100 years, 200 years, if we make it that far. But here's a good example. When I was taking science in college, I'll never forget when my professor was teaching us a little bit about the theory of relativity. And he said when Einstein came up with the theory of relativity in the early 1900s, in the first few years after he came up with those theories, there were maybe 10 people in the world that understood it, like in 1917 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then he said it took 50 years for everybody else to catch up. That's how brilliant he was.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like
and he
that.
said generally in science that's kind of the case.
Yeah.
Like our advances are in leaps, but it takes the bulk of the people decades to catch up with those really brilliant geniuses that have changed our history. And I sat there going, you know, like that makes a lot of sense, you know.
Yeah.
And now
And-
they've gone beyond Einstein.
Yeah.
Like all the physicists have.
I know, and that's
gone
why
behind them, but it took 50 years.
I like. Yeah, I like to believe that our brains are evolving, and I hope that we do get smarter before we're extinct.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many social issues involved.
I mean, I think we're already smart enough to get past the fossil No,
We
Steve.
are, but
It's just that
we're-
we have a. It's that
The social constructs,
we have
man.
a certain. We have a certain number of people who simply have too much power, and
Yeah.
they have all the cards, all the money,